and welcome in to the first ever episode of Eye of the Storm. I want to begin by explaining what the vision is for this podcast. My name is Edwin Thorpe, and I am passionate about college sports and about the Iowa State Cyclones. Therefore, this is going to be a college sports show where we talk all the major sports with a focus on the Big 12 and specifically on Iowa State. But I do want this to be a show where a fan of really any team in the Big 12 can tune in and get something out of it. I think that one of the biggest problems that fans run into as a source of frustration is where you watch your team and they do something that might work in one game, but it doesn't translate to the next. I mean, how often do you hear people say the phrase, they just looked like a totally different team than what we normally see? My goal is to help fans of Iowa State and the Big 12 understand why that happens. And to do that, we're going to do some deep dives into the X's and O's of football, men's and women's basketball, and analyze what it is that teams are trying to do when they play the Cyclones, how Iowa State adjusts, and vice versa. The hope is that after listening to this podcast, you can watch your favorite team and see the coaching decisions and adjustments, in real time as they happen, and understand why your team is doing what they're doing. I plan to record this twice a week for the rest of basketball season, once to react to the midweek games and look ahead to the weekend, and once to react to the weekend and look ahead to the midweek games, because that's just how the Big 12 schedule is structured. I'm not huge on hot takes or instant reactions. That's what X is for. So I prefer to have, a few hours to think about the game that I watched and maybe rewatch it, do some analyzing, so that I can give you an objective, informed, analytical take on how the game played out. With that, I just want to thank you for listening as we try to build this show into something that has a real presence in the Big 12 and in the Iowa State media space. So let's begin with some men's basketball. Obviously, the Iowa State Cyclones off to a 3-0 conference start with the best overall record in school history at 16-0. But if you watch the last few games, something that's become somewhat of a trend that, has Iowa State fans concerned is these slow starts. In the West Virginia game, which I was lucky enough to be at, I think you get down 19-15 early in that one. You get down 8 at Baylor, 9 at Oklahoma State. And in all those games, Iowa State actually held a halftime lead, right? They came back even within the first half. So you're not even putting yourself in a situation where you necessarily have to come back from a big second-half deficit. But you do kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball early, and we know how difficult it can be, especially with road games, to come back from a deficit if you get behind early. And obviously Iowa State has 2 road games this week. It's a tough week no matter how you slice it. At Kansas, it's just never going to be easy. I saw some people saying that it should be an easy win for Iowa State at Kansas. And if you just look at the metrics, the profiles of the two teams, like, you could say that, but that just doesn't take enough context into account here. It's Kansas, it's Fog Allen. We saw what happened their very last home game. TCU blew a massive lead at the end of that game. Now TCU is nowhere near as good as Iowa State, but still, you haven't won in the Fog since 2017. That's going to be a difficult game. That's 8 o'clock ESPN on Tuesday. And then looking at the schedule, at Cincinnati Saturday, another game that's not going to be easy. They gave you a run for it, I think, 2 years ago. Iowa State went down there. And so going into these games, what's kind of been the topic of conversation in Iowa State circles is, can you change the slow starts? Can you, at least be in a situation where you're even or, take an early lead on these teams? Because something that we have seen with TJ Altenberger teams in this defense is that once they get a lead, they almost never give it up. They're very, very good at playing from ahead when they get you behind. It's kind of like in football. When you get a team down a couple scores and it changes the game script and they feel like they have to throw it a lot more, and you can just kind of sit back in your defense and force their quarterback to make mistakes. that's what Iowa State's done in basketball, right? They get a lead on you, they make you press, they make you take more difficult shots, make more difficult passes, and it just leads to mistakes that Iowa State tees off on. And it kind of sets up Iowa State's entire operation. They haven't been nearly as good in dogfights early on in these games. And I think there is a good reason why. And I don't think it's as bad as Iowa State fans might think. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here. The way that Iowa State has gotten behind early in these games, going all the way back to Iowa and even the Purdue game. I don't know if you can classify a 4-point deficit in Mackey Arena as a slow start. But still, they won that game by 25. All of that margin they got in the second half of that one, right? So, as you go back and look, at the last 5-6 games Iowa State has played against legit competition, they've gotten behind early. They've been in really tough games early on. And the way that teams have done that is by shooting the three ball. Now, there's obviously a lot more to it than just shooting the ball well. So, Iowa State comes out in the same defense every game. It's very extended. They get out beyond the three-point line, and they're very aggressive with the ball pressure. Obviously, Lipsy and Torre, probably the two best on-ball defenders in the country. Why would you do anything else, right? So they come and they bring a double team. Anytime the opponent uses their big man, their 5, to screen for the ball handler. Iowa State, it's called blitzing the screen. They come up, they will bring their bigs, so Blake Buchanan, Dom Plata, and whoever's on the ball. So like Buchanan and Torre, oftentimes you'll see trying to execute that double team. And it makes perfect sense when you think about the way that TJ Alterberger preaches how to play basketball. How many times have we heard him say, we want to be the aggressor, we want to punch first? That makes perfect sense when you consider how they play defense, because this is a style of defense that's not even defense as much as it is offense. It's designed to go attack the offense and get the ball back before they can even get into their their offensive set, their play. Before they can even get comfortable, you're going to go try to take the ball. Now, there is a downside to that. Obviously, when you bring a double team, when you bring a lot of ball pressure, you open up the middle, and you have the chance to leave somebody open on the perimeter. Now, right, it's a 3-on-4 when you bring your double team. Now, that's really difficult to take advantage of as a ball handler when you have two guys blitzing you, because you have to find a way to make a pass quickly enough to where your team can swing it around the perimeter and find the open guy before the defense rotates back. And what we've seen a lot of times in these games where teams will not come prepared to play Iowa State is they'll blitz the ball handler, and if he gets the ball out of his hands, it usually goes to the big at maybe the free throw line, the elbow, because that's the easiest pass to make. You find a big target, and it's a short pass. And that big, a lot of times, when Iowa State's done really well early on, that big will go try to make a play himself. He'll dribble into the paint, oftentimes attract a double team himself. He'll take an elbow jumper, low percentage shot, or whatever. Where teams have been successful is when they've gotten the ball into and out of the hands of their 5 men really quickly. So when you see, Parsifala catching the ball at the elbow and not taking it himself, but immediately dishing the ball to the corner. That's how Oklahoma State hit a couple early threes in that game. That's the same thing West Virginia did, actually. They don't look to attack the paint when they get their 4-on-3. They look to attack from outside, because Iowa State, even when they're outnumbered, is trying really, really hard to take the paint away from you. And they'll give you the 3 if you have the presence of mind to find it. And then obviously you have to make the shot, right? If you're going to beat Iowa State's defense, you have to be able to move the ball really quickly, you have to be unselfish, and you have to shoot well. It's hard to do all those things. That's why it's difficult to beat Iowa State's defense. But we have seen teams have stretches of success like that at the beginning of these games, because they come out with a good game plan. Their point guards, their bigs, they know what to do, and their shooters are ready for the ball to come to them. But the reason that those have not been sustained, why Iowa State's been able to come back and take the lead before halftime in all these games, is is the same thing that makes TJ Otzelberger the best coach in college basketball, in my opinion, and that's that he and his staff are able to make adjustments to what the offense is doing without getting away from their identity. And if you think about it for a second, that's really incredible, because the entire goal of coaching, really, the entire idea of what you're trying to do with your game plan when you play Iowa State is you want to get them away from their identity. When you play anyone, right? When you come out, you're trying to put them into situations where they're uncomfortable, get them to do stuff that they're not used to doing, take away their A game. And then they'll have to adjust to you, and then you have to adjust to them, and so on and so forth. This is how coaching works. It's a constant battle of adjustments, right? A never-ending chess game. And it's really fun to watch if you know what to look for. But what makes TJ Otzelberger so good is that Iowa State never stops playing the same style of defense. Even when teams have had success against them, they keep bringing the double teams. They keep playing with the same strategy, but they make tiny adjustments here and there to take away what you want to do. So if you watched that Oklahoma State game the other day, it took 5 minutes, and Iowa State was taking away the three. And they were actually giving Oklahoma State's bigs a little bit more room to work with, and Parsifala was able to take advantage of that to some extent, but not enough to consistently keep Oklahoma State's offense rolling, because Iowa State would flash a man in from the corner like they were going to double the middle. When Oklahoma State breaks the double team, gets it to their big man at the elbow, Iowa State would flash middle, appearing to take away the paint. And then if he wants to kick it back out, he'd kick it out. It's not there anymore. Tamin Lipsey's covering you up, and you don't have an open shot. And what that does is it puts the onus back on the offense's big man when he catches the ball in the middle to make that read and say, okay, are they going to cover up the corner? Are they going to take away the paint? Should I go make a play myself or find the shooter in the corner? Should I kick it back out? And in the time that it takes a big man to think through that, and you actually see this if you watch the games, the five man for the offense will catch the ball at the elbow and just take a second to think, to try to make the read and figure out what play you should make. And in that second, Iowa State's already rotated back out of their double team and onto their men. That's what's so incredible about this TJ Otzelberger defense, is they just rotate so quickly, they adjust quickly, right? This is what was missing at times last year when you had a Deshaun Jackson, a Brant Chatfield, who weren't as mobile as your Blake Buchanans, and weren't able to quite make those rotations in time. That's where Iowa State would get beat down low in those games. But you see the adjustments that Iowa State makes if you watch. Their style is always the same, but they make enough adjustments to take away what the offense wants to do in such a way that it really creates a puzzling situation if you're trying to coach against Iowa State and TJ Otzelberger, because you know what they're going to do, but you also don't, right? You know that they're going to bring the double team, but you don't know what they're going to give you, right? There's three basic areas you can kind of attack on offense in basketball. You can attack around the perimeter with three-point shooting, you can attack the paint, or you can attack the middle. And a defense can usually take away two of those three, but you can't take away all three, right? And so the trick, if you're coaching, especially against Iowa State, is that you don't know which one of those three areas Iowa State is going to give you, and you don't have time to figure it out because they're bringing a double team at you as soon as you try to set a ball screen, right? And so that's where, you've kind of seen some slow starts early in these games, because if you watch Iowa State on film, you can figure out what they're going to give you to start the game, because they start every game the same. They start every game giving you the three-point shot and saying, all right, we're going to make your shooters beat us. And so it's really easy to come out and say, okay, we're going to swing it, we're going to throw it into the middle to the big man, we're going to kick it out to the corner and get that three. But as soon as Iowa State makes that first adjustment, you're now, you're lost in the maze. You have no idea what they're going to give you and what they're going to take away. And that's where, Iowa State's been able to really lock down towards the end of the first half of these games and sustain their defense in the second half. Now, I'm not really sure what Iowa State could do to fix those slow starts then without getting away from their identity, because what they're doing is working. It just takes a little bit of time because you have to set up the offense. You have to get them where you want them, and it takes some time to do that. And so everyone's kind of freaking out a little bit about these slow starts. I guess not freaking out, but there's some concern. And, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I was concerned when you were down 9 early on to Oklahoma State, or down 8 to Baylor, or even, in a dogfight with West Virginia in that game, especially in the Iowa game. It was really concerning there for a little bit, right? You're down 13 late in the first half. Yes, that's very concerning, but in the grand scheme of things, it's all part of TJ Otzelberger and Iowa State setting up their opponent where they want them, so that they can really go to work and tighten the screws on the defensive end. And then the other part of these slow starts is that, obviously defense is only half the story. The offense is the other half of the story. And we've seen Iowa State struggle to score early in these games. But it goes actually right back to the defense. Because if you listen to TJ Otzelberger and you've watched any of his teams, you know that Iowa State has always been a transition type offense. They're always going to be the most effective when they force turnovers, when they get out and run. And the half-court offense has, improved every year, really, under Otzelberger, but it's still not, world-beating, NBA-type half-court offense. Iowa State just really hasn't had a ton of those guys offensively. And so the offense flows from the defense. And if you listen to TJ Otzelberger talk, this is something that he's emphasized for the entirety of his tenure at Iowa State. And so, the defensive part of these slow starts actually explains the offensive part. Because when you're giving them some open shots, when you're giving them, some chances for baskets early, you kind of cut down on your own ability to get out and get in transition. And that's going to make offense tougher for Iowa State. So, when you look, in totality at the way Iowa State has started these games, yes, they've been behind, but it's always paid dividends in the end. And I'm not sure that you can really make whole-scale changes to fix those starts without sacrificing some of your defensive effectiveness later in the game. Now, what you can do, and I think, anyone who's watched the last few games, you look at Iowa State and you say, man, there's some opportunities we had in transition that we did not convert. There were a couple times in the Oklahoma State game and in the Baylor game where Iowa State had numbers 2-on-1, 3-on-2 coming down in transition, and they just tried to make passes that were a little bit too cute, too fancy. Especially with Jefferson, I think I'd like to see him in transition just take the ball to the rack a little bit more. That'll certainly help you get to the foul line. He's either going to get to the foul line or get to the bucket when he comes down the lane. But cleaning up those transition possessions can improve your offense a little bit out of the gate in these games. The other thing that Iowa State can do is just hunt Milan a little bit more. Milan Momcilovic has felt like it's taken him a little bit to get going in these games, and so has the Iowa State offense, right? It's a pretty linear relationship between how Momcilovic plays and how the offense plays. They've proven they can score even when he's not, having a great game. They did that in the second half against Baylor. But getting him going earlier is going to be something that will help a lot with these slow starts. Outside of that, though, the thing about Iowa State's offense is, and TJ Otzelberger is very upfront about this, it all, flows from the defense. It's connected to the defense, right? They want to play in transition. They want to force turnovers and get out and run. And, Iowa State has improved every year of the Otzelberger era in the half court, but they've never been, and they're still not just this, world-beating NBA half court offense. And I don't know that they're really ever going to be that. So, as it relates to how you come out and start these games, if you're going to give the other team, some open shots on defense, if you're going to kind of play conservatively, feel them out, and then adjust, that's also going to hurt your offense a little bit. And I think it's just kind of a fact of how TJ Otzelberger is choosing to play these games. And I don't know that it's something that's nearly as bad as, you know, you'll hear some people make it out to be. You definitely don't want to be down double digits at the beginning of these games. And I don't think the Iowa State should, even playing the way they are. They can at least, I think, stay even until, they really start to tighten the screws down and pull away. And there's obviously some things that you can do offensively to mitigate that. Other takeaways from conference play so far, I think everyone's complaining about the officiating a lot. I don't know that it's necessarily been as bad as it's made out to be, but it's definitely been different. Something that we've seen for years in the Big 12 is officials will call a game very loosely to start off. They'll kind of let the players play, and it's created these really, really tough physical games. And then in the second half of these conference games, they've really tightened down, called a ton of fouls, made it a free throw contest. And that's just kind of been how these games have worked for at least 5 years, at least going back to the pandemic. That's the way games have been officiated. And it feels different this year. It feels like they're calling a tighter game from the jump. I know if you're watching Iowa State, that's absolutely hurt the Cyclones. It's been a huge problem in terms of getting players like Tamin Lipsey into foul trouble. Milan Momcilovic, Joshua Jefferson right off the bat. You really can't afford to have that happen too often. That's been another factor in Iowa State's slow starts is the early foul trouble. It's just something that Iowa State's going to have to learn how to play with. All these teams are going to learn how to play with it. I know Houston struggled with that a little bit. Texas Tech has as well. It's really fascinating to me that the officiating has changed the way that it has. I don't know if that is some connection to the league office. I mean, every conference officiates the game differently. They actually tell their officials to emphasize different things. It's normally a bigger deal in football, but it has an effect in basketball as well. So obviously we'll be monitoring how these games are called because it really does affect the game. It affects the style of basketball that you can play. And so Iowa State's going to have to adjust to how the officials are calling these games. There's really no way around it. And look, that might be another thing that contributes to starting slow. But, I mean, TJ Otzelberger and his staff are phenomenal coaches. They'll find a way to adjust to it, I'm sure. And then finally, the health of Tamin Lipsey has just been a concern for his whole career. There's nothing that you can do about it. I know everyone wants to hear solutions. How do we keep Tamin healthier? Can we play him for fewer minutes? Can we do this? Can we do that? He's been playing fewer minutes per game this year than he has any season since his freshman year. The last 2 games, I think, I know foul trouble had a lot to do with it, but he only averaged like 23 minutes, something like that. Yeah, 23 minutes against Oklahoma State and 24 against Baylor. So, I mean, guys, that's not a ton of time on the court at all for him. And he still just doesn't really look comfortable. It looked like he might have tweaked his groin or something in that area again. So that'll definitely be something to watch as Iowa State goes to Kansas and Cincinnati this week. You obviously need Lipsey to be healthy if you're going to make a run in March. But there's not a solution. There's not many things that like Iowa State can just do to mitigate that. Tamin Lipsey is going to play the way he does. It's the reason why he's so good. He plays super hard. He's always hitting the deck. And that's just Tamin. It's been quite a roller coaster for Iowa State fans watching the way Tamin plays. There's so many times where he hits the court and it's like, gosh, I'm like, could you just try a little less hard, Tamin? But that'll bear monitoring again. All you can really do is just hope that by some miracle he stays mostly healthy, and you get to March Madness and he's ready to go 100%. Although I don't know that he's ever really 100%. So I'd settle for 90. I'd settle for 90% Tamin Lipsey any game, but that will bear watching. Going into this game against Kansas, Just looking down the stat sheet here, where is Iowa State going to have an advantage? Obviously, you have the whole Darren Peterson situation. It'll be really interesting to me if Iowa State, and particularly Killian Torre, can make him miserable. Can you wear him out? Can you run him out of this game? Obviously, that would be huge because he averages 23 points a game for the Jayhawks, only 27 minutes. So obviously, his efficiency scoring the ball is off the charts. But we know the whole situation where is he not on a minutes restriction? What's going on there? Bill Self, the last few games has reached a point where he's just taken Peterson out of the game, period. Both of those games were still in doubt at the time, and Peterson never came back in. He didn't play in overtime against TCU, and he didn't play the last several minutes against West Virginia in a very close game. So it will be really interesting to see, can Iowa State affect that at all? Is there anything that you can do to actually, take him out of this game or make him take himself out of the game? Elsewhere down the roster, the Jayhawks are obviously talented, but I wouldn't say they're nearly as deep as they have been. I have a lot of questions about Bill Self in general. He just hasn't been doing as much with the talent that he has as he did in the past. And not only that, his teams aren't as talented. That's been another contributor to just this program really falling off a cliff. They're sitting at 1-2 right now in conference play. They don't. I mean, when you watch them, especially when Peterson isn't on the floor, they don't even look like a tournament team. I'm not saying they're going to miss the tournament, but they just have a long way to go if they want to make any noise in March. Trey White, Flory Badunga, Melvin Council, those are the guys that you're going to have to slow down if you want to shut them down. Now, with White and Council, those are both guards who have some size. So, can Taman Lipsey step up, take one of those guys away? Nate Heisey is going to be huge in this game at 6'5". Iowa State has used him to defend a lot of those bigger guards, and he's done an excellent job. He'll need to do it again here. I expect you'll see him on either White or Council for most of this game, so look for that. Flory Badunga, he plays 31 minutes a game, averaging 14 points and 9 rebounds for Kansas. Can Iowa State take him out of this game? It would be something that's really interesting to me. Can you wear him out? Can you hold him to playing, 22, 23 minutes? Because if Iowa State does that, Kansas really does not have much else in the post at all. I mean, they only have 4 players on the whole roster listed as forwards, and 2 of them, played 5 minutes or less a game. So it's Badunga and Bryson Tiller. Blake Buchanan is, I would say, probably a better player than both of these guys. Badunga, if you've seen him play, he's kind of like a Hassan Ward type player, dunks everything. They love to lob it up to him. NBA type big. He's not really going to step out and shoot it, but he's definitely a force around the rim, and it will be a challenge for Buchanan and Jefferson to slow him down. But besides just slowing him down, I'd love to see Iowa State wear him out. They've proven they can do this, especially to opposing bigs. You saw it in the Iowa game. You saw it with Najee and Baylor the other night. So can you do it here with Badunga? That would be huge in this game, because if you take away Badunga, if you limit Peterson, if you can limit Council even somewhat, there's just not enough scoring depth on this Kansas team to beat Iowa State. They don't turn the ball over a ton, 11 times a game. This is an Allen Fieldhouse, so I don't know if you're Iowa State that you can really rely on, forcing 16, 17 turnovers here. So the half-court offense is going to have to come into play, right? Can Iowa State score against this team in the half-court? Absolutely. They don't have a matchup for Milan Momcilovic. So, again, I'd love to see Iowa State go right to Momcilovic right off the jump. They also don't really have a matchup for Joshua Jefferson. I mean, when you look down this roster and you have, 2 forwards who play 20 minutes a game, there just isn't the size, to handle Iowa State when you talk about having a Blake Buchanan, Joshua Jefferson and Milan Momcilovic on the court at the same time. I think Iowa State, and this sounds crazy to say, given the past history, but I think Iowa State can really bully this team with their size a little bit. Kansas is a good rebounding team. A lot of these guards are excellent rebounders for their size. Trey White gets 7 a game. Peterson gets 5. Cancel gets 4. So you're going to have to box out. Obviously, you're going to have to keep them off the offensive glass. But if Iowa State takes away second chance points, I do not think this team will score a lot on Iowa State. Iowa State has been great at taking away the lob. I don't think that will be a huge factor here. But as usual, they're going to give Kansas some chances to shoot the three ball. Kansas shoots 35% as a team, but Trey White will hurt you there. He's 42%. Peterson, 42%. Jamari McDowell, 41%. So he's another guy who can really hurt you from the three-point line. The rest of this lineup does not shoot the three well. Council is not a good three-point shooter. You know, it would be very true to an Iowa State game if Melvin Council or, I don't know, some random guard for Kansas made 6 threes. That would, it feels like that would be on par for an Iowa State game. We've seen a lot of, crazy shooting games from guys who aren't great shooters. But, just playing the numbers here, I think if you make them take 25 three-pointers in this game, there is a world where Kansas goes cold and Iowa State pulls away here. So don't be too shocked if that happens. I really don't see a world where Iowa State gets buried. Allen Fieldhouse is tough. The Phog is, I would say, the toughest place to play in the country, just in terms of, being able to put that team away in their building. You just don't do it. I mean, no one has really done it. There might have been one game a couple years ago, I think, where TCU won big in there, but it just doesn't happen. You don't beat them until the final buzzer in their building. So I mean, at the end of the day, this really profiles as a game that's going to be close. I think Iowa State's favored by 3.5. I would, if I had $10, I would bet it on Iowa State here. If I had to bet, which I don't, but. I mean, it's a scary game in terms of trying to maintain your undefeated record. It'll be the first, I would say, really big time test for the Cyclones since the Purdue game. I think looking back, Iowa State definitely underachieved in the Iowa game. Iowa's not played well. Baylor has not played well. A lot of the teams that Iowa State have not done any favors to the Cyclones from a resume standpoint. Baylor, I don't know what's going on with Baylor. They don't even look like a tournament team. I think their odds are less than 50-50 to make it at this point. And Kansas is kind of hovering around there too. They need this game to not be a bubble team because if you look at Kansas's schedule, if they lose this game, they don't really have another chance to impress until BYU on January 31st. And then they have a tougher stretch where they see Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State in a 4-game span there. Or rather, that's BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, Arizona, Iowa State. That stretch will define their season. But if they want to get to that point with a chance to really make some noise, they need this one. They need to beat Iowa State. I don't love they lost to West Virginia because I don't want to see Kansas coming home after a loss. So there's a lot of warning signs here. Statistically, there's no way Iowa State should lose unless Darren Peterson goes off. If you limit Darren Peterson, Iowa State is good enough that they should have no business messing around with these guys. But on the road with an Iowa State team that hasn't necessarily been playing its best ball, it's just hard for me to really see this getting out of hand. There's a world where it does. There's a world where Iowa State wins this by 18. I don't think there's a world where Kansas wins this by 18. But I think 95 times out of 100, this is a single-digit outcome either way. Looking now around the Big 12, you have a 3-game slate on Tuesday. There's no big Monday game this week. But on Tuesday, besides the Iowa State game, we have Baylor at Oklahoma State. Baylor is a 1-point favorite in that game, and this might be the most fascinating game of the week to me in terms of outcome. Both of these teams need this one, to kind of get into the NCAA tournament conversation. I mean, I don't think Baylor's in it right now. They're 0-3 in the Big 12. They haven't won a good game. They need this one. This would be a quality win for them. I believe it would be quad one on Oklahoma State's home court. But I expect Oklahoma State to win this game coming home off a loss. They are a better team than Baylor. I don't think there's any doubt that Baylor's the more talented team in this situation, but Oklahoma State has just played better. They've gelled better. I think at this point you could almost argue they have a coaching advantage. I think Lutz is a really good coach, and I think Scott Drew is just he's not at his best right now. That's also at 8 p.m. It's on CBS Sports Network, so unfortunately I'll be watching the Cyclones. Won't get a chance to catch that one. And then the other one, we have West Virginia going to Houston. I don't feel like there's a whole lot to talk about there. Houston at home should win that game. Obviously, it's the Big 12. Anything can happen on any given night, at home or away. But it's really tough to win on the road. If West Virginia somehow pulls an upset, we'll be talking about it a lot, I'm sure. But I expect Houston to win that one comfortably. Houston minus 12.5 there. I definitely like Houston to cover that spread. And then Wednesday we have a full slate of games. Colorado at Cincinnati is maybe a little bit more interesting than you might think at first glance. Now, Colorado is 2-1 in the Big 12. They haven't really beaten anyone great, but they hung right with Texas Tech the other night, pulled off an incredible comeback, and just weren't able to finish it. But they've shown they can hang around with some good teams, and this is a team that, if they're sitting there at the end of the season at 8-10, 9-9 in the Big 12, they'll be on the bubble, and it would be great for the Big 12 if Colorado was able to get into that conversation. This is a big test for them. It'll also be interesting, knowing that Iowa State goes to Cincinnati on Saturday. Moving down, we got UCF at Kansas State. Man, there's not a lot to talk about on the Kansas State side. They're just not good. I don't think Jerome Tang is a great coach. They're overpaying him for sure. But UCF needs this one, man. They were in the top 25 for a week, fell out of it, lost a game they probably should not have lost at Oklahoma State. But if they want to get back into that conversation, to be on the bubble, to be competing, to be in the NCAA tournament, they need this game. It's not one that you should be losing if you are a good basketball team. Utah at Texas Tech. Obviously, Texas Tech should win that comfortably. Arizona State at Arizona could be interesting. In-state rivalry. Arizona State's had some interesting games. They're not, I wouldn't call them good, 1-2 in conference, but I mean, they beat Oklahoma, beat Washington State in the non-conference. They hung with Gonzaga, but they've also had some games where they were blown out by really bad teams. So we'll see what happens there. That's just one where I don't think it would shock me if I look and that's an 8-point game with 5 minutes left. It could certainly happen, but I expect Arizona to roll there as well. And then finally, we have TCU at BYU. Man, TCU has been right there with Kansas. They absolutely should have beaten Kansas. They hung with Arizona, tried to pull off a comeback, just couldn't quite finish it late in that one. They end up losing by double digits at home. But this is another team that just needs something to go their way. It feels like they have a lot of talent. They're playing really well in some ways, but they can't quite break through. BYU is not the team you want to be up against if you're trying to break through, but it does present an opportunity. For the Big 12's sake, I'd kind of like to see TCU win this game. The more tournament teams, the better. It's going to boost Iowa State's resume as well. If the teams towards the middle, bottom half of this conference can pull off some big wins, because it doesn't take a lot to get yourself on the bubble. in the bubble conversation, really. Just a couple big-time wins against ranked teams. Those are the ones that matter the most. Their schedule gets significantly easier after that BYU game, so, I mean, don't be surprised if TCU gets hot coming down the stretch here. I think they're that good. The question is just, can they respond to a couple of tough losses? And I believe that's all the Big 12 has for the midweek games. After that, there's nothing until Friday when Baylor's at Kansas. That will be a fascinating game for sure. Looking elsewhere in college basketball, obviously Michigan drops from 1 to 3 in the AP poll. Iowa State up to 2. It'll be really interesting to see if Iowa State can claim that top spot at some point this season. They've never been number one. I think it would be really cool, at least for me, just to see the one next to their name. Obviously, it's tough to hold on to it. And I don't think that even if Iowa State were to get to number one, that they would be able to stay there the whole season, just because the Big 12 is so tough and you're gonna lose some games. Iowa State is not going undefeated in conference play, as awesome as that would be. I mean, I think there's a clear path to 15-3, maybe 16-2. You're just gonna play too many difficult games. Whereas, the Dukes of the world, the Michigans of the world are going to have a slightly easier path. And I can see a world where even though the Big 12 has number 1 and 2 right now, you get to the end of the season and there's not even a Big 12 team in the top 5, but maybe you have, 4 in the top 15. That's definitely, an outcome that's in the cards, because the Big 12, they're going to beat up on each other a lot. You hope Iowa State could get through that with enough juice to be in the 1 seed conversation come March. So I think they will be. I think this team has a better chance than maybe any we've seen to earn a 1 seed at the end of the season in the NCAA tournament. We have Virginia, Louisville on Tuesday. Don't really know enough about those teams in the ACC. It feels like the ACC is down again. They've just never really, there was a period there where Duke, Virginia, North Carolina, the ACC was kind of dominant, and it's been several years now since that point, and they've never really gotten back there. Let's see, Wednesday, Iowa is at Purdue. Not really sure who you should root for in that one if you're an Iowa State fan. Obviously, Iowa State beat both teams. I'd root for Purdue just because it wouldn't be great for Iowa State's resume if Purdue lost another home game. I mean, can you imagine, we get to the end of the season and Purdue's sitting there and they're, 27-3 or something, and the only team to beat them at home at all year is Iowa State. That would look phenomenal. That would be the kind of thing that can, maybe bump you from a 2 seed to a 1 seed in the eyes of the committee. But obviously, Iowa isn't playing great basketball right now. It would help Iowa State if they were to pick that up. That would definitely be nice for the resume. There's not really a blockbuster game in college basketball this week. I'd say Iowa State at Kansas will probably get more eyes than anything else. That will be the one to watch. Let's look now at some women's basketball. Obviously, the Cyclone women are on a 3-game losing streak, now 14-3, 2-3 in the Big 12, and injury is a big part of that. There's no denying that losing Addie Brown and her 13 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists has made a big difference. Honestly, you could argue the rebounds and assists far more important maybe even than what she does scoring the basketball. And then also Ariana Jackson, sounds like she'll be back pretty soon, but in the meantime, losing a 48% three-point shooter has really hurt this team. Same with losing Addie and 42%. AB does not sound like she will be back anytime soon. From what I'm hearing, it's at least a 4-week type deal, maybe more than that. And it's really had a negative effect on the Cyclones. But the streak started even before Addie Brown got hurt. It started in the Baylor game, and there was a lot that happened in that game that I just kind of watched like, man, this team really has some holes that they need to fill. Starting kind of with the rebounding, this has been really a struggle area for the Cyclones for a while. And I have a theory on this, which is that what gets rebounds is not size. It's not just size, right? Being tall definitely helps as a rebounder, but what gets rebounds is hustle and effort, going and tracking down the ball instead of just waiting for it to come to you. Now, I don't think the Cyclones are lacking an effort at all, but when you think about specifically Audie Crooks, because Audie Crooks is so big and draws so much attention that she actually clogs up the paint, and so when a shot goes up, and Iowa State's guards or Addie Brown are trying to track the ball down, Crooks is getting in their way. Not because she's doing anything wrong. She's just a big player. Her job is to control the paint, and she does that well. But when it comes to rebounding, from what I've seen, the rest of Iowa State's players have really been struggling to go get the ball just because of the amount of traffic that Crooks creates in the paint. And this has led to a ton of offensive rebounds for opposing teams. And I mean, it really makes sense when you do think about it, though, because, in general, offensive players are going to be on the outside and defensive players are on the inside, right? They're trying to stay between the offense and the basket. And so if Crooks is inside, the way that they've had her on defense, she's going to make it harder for the players on the inside, of the three-point line to move around. And that's the defense. And offenses have really been taking advantage of that, not just with rebounds. And so I think, it might behoove the Cyclones a little bit to almost bring Audie up a little bit. They've had her sitting back in the paint. So they've kind of been giving the other team the mid-range jumper. It really hurt them against Baylor. Talia Scott made a couple of those, including the game winner. It's not a horrible plan in general because that's a low percentage shot. Most teams aren't going to live and die by the mid-range. But I think if you were to have Crooks lift just a little bit, maybe come up to the free throw line on some of these screens, then I think when a shot goes up, you might actually improve rebounding because Crooks, if she's on the more towards the outside, is going to make it harder for the players on the outside to move, right? She's going to be impeding the offense and not the defense. And so I think if you were to do that, then Iowa State would start to see a lot more success rebounding. And so much of rebounding, too, is blocking out. And that's something, that Crooks can do in terms of being able to hold her position. But blocking out isn't just being able to hold your position. It's about moving the other player. And Audie Crooks, obviously is great at moving people, but she really hasn't been doing a lot to push them out of the paint when a shot goes up. She's been doing a great job holding her ground, but the effect of that is that she only really is able to get a rebound when it comes straight to her, and otherwise she's not going to be able to collect it because she's not about to, go sprint to the ball. I mean, she can, but it wouldn't be effective. So I think maybe if Iowa State were to adjust just by bringing her up, Fennelly and the staff know a whole lot more than me. But at least my theory on rebounding is I think having Crooks down there in the paint all the time is really, really impeding the rebounding effort. And the second chance points have just been brutal for Iowa State the last few games. If you look at the West Virginia game and you look at second chance points, I believe they're not listed, but you give up 11 offensive rebounds in that one. The Baylor game, Iowa State gave up 20-something offensive rebounds. No, sorry, that's incorrect. They give up 14 in the Baylor game, and Cincinnati, you give up 8. So that is, 30-something offensive rebounds given up during this losing streak. That translates to a lot of second chance points, and that's a real problem. But the problems aren't just on that end for Iowa State, or they would still be doing all right because they have a great offense. But the offense hasn't been working either in this 3-game stretch where the Cyclones have struggled so much. If you look at, and I actually want to look at some clips here. I want to go way into the weeds on this, because the way that teams have been defending Iowa State has been really fascinating to me. What did we talk about earlier, right? You have the three areas where you can attack a defense in basketball, right? You can attack the hoop, you can attack the middle, or you can try to score from the perimeter. And a defense can usually take away two of those three. And what they've tried to take away, what Baylor did, what West Virginia did, and Cincinnati too, is they've taken away Audi and they've taken away the perimeter. And what Iowa State has not been able to do is attack the middle. So as an example of this, we're going to bring up first this clip. This is, I think, the very first possession of the West Virginia game. Now here, Iowa State does this properly. West Virginia extends. They try to take away Audi with a double team. They extend the defense way out beyond the three-point line. And Iowa State makes them pay. Jada gets it into Reese Beatty, and Beatty scores a mid-range jumper. Perfectly done. But a couple possessions later, this is the fourth possession of the game. And what you see here, fourth, might have been third. There's about 8 minutes to go first quarter. And again, defense, three defenders are extended way beyond the three-point line, 3-4 feet. They have two on Audi. But they've pushed Williams way out onto the right wing. They have Beatty way back at the logo, right? They're up in her face. And then they kind of have one defender trying to manage both Kinsey Hare and Sydney Harris. So that's a 4-on-3 on the perimeter, right? And you should be able to win those. But in order to do that, you have to move the ball quickly. You have to get it around the three-point line quickly to find the open woman in this case and get your three-point shot. But when you extend the defense the way West Virginia has, when you push it way out, you can take away a lot of those perimeter passes. And that really stuck out to me in the West Virginia game specifically, was Iowa State couldn't make the perimeter passes. And for the most part, they weren't able to get in the middle. Because in this case, the defense is giving you all sorts of space in the middle. Like, it's wide open. But Iowa State wasn't able to get in there, and so they weren't really able to move the ball at all. It got stuck, created a lot of turnovers. There were so many bad passes in the second half of that game. But bad passes that were forced. It wasn't just a failure to execute the passing. It was a failure. It was a failure on Iowa State's part to identify where the space was. And you can see it right here in this play, right? They try to swing it around, and even though they have an advantage, the extended defense forces a deflection. On the next play, they turned the ball over. So now if we look at another possession, this is third quarter, I believe. This is in the second half. And once again, you have the setup where they push Jada Williams way out onto the wing, right? Iowa State spreads out on the perimeter, but they take away this pass on the top of the key. And this was something West Virginia did all game. They would force Iowa State to one side. They would take away the pass back to the middle of the court, and they would try to trap the ball on one side of the court. And what you're going to see as this play develops is that as Williams is holding the ball, she wants to get it into Audi, but she can't. She ends up making a pass that gets deflected, and it results in a turnover, right? But if you wind it back just a little bit, you'll see that West Virginia has successfully forced Iowa State into playing 4-on-3 because they have left one defender on the other side of the court to guard two offensive players. And so if Iowa State could get it over there, they could get an open shot, but they can't because the ball pressure is so good and the defense is extended so far that Williams can't make that long pass. She would have to skip it all the way across the court. Iowa State tried a couple times in that game, and it usually resulted in a turnover. And even if you make that pass, the amount of time that it takes to get there is really going to negate any kind of advantage that you get from making the pass. And so Iowa State's kind of stuck playing 4-on-3, or really 3-on-2 in this case, with Audi and Jada, and it results in a turnover. And you see, actually, Elisa Williams attacked the middle, but it's too late. So if Iowa State could get to that earlier, you might see some more success. And if we go to the next possession, this is, again, late third quarter. And you see it again. a double on Audie. You see the defense extended out. This is Sydney Harris holding the ball in the corner. The defense has extended out on Beatty. They extended out on Reagan Wilson because, again, they're trying to trap the ball on one side of the court. And you have a wide open player on the other side of the court. Can't quite tell who that is in this clip. But they just can't get the ball there because of the defensive pressure by West Virginia. And again, you have a baseline drive that results in a turnover. And so, this was a trend in the West Virginia game. It was a trend. It was a significant trend in the Baylor game as well. If we look at the next one here, we see another situation where West Virginia brings the defense all the way out to half court almost. And when that happens, usually as an offense, it takes you 2 good passes to create a bucket, right? This is kind of how defenses have been attacking Iowa State on the men's side, right, with their ball pressure and their double teams, is it takes not 1 pass, but 2. If you can make 2 good passes and make them quickly, you'll get an open bucket, right? But Iowa State can't set up those 2 good passes. Here, you have, I believe this is Beatty, try to make a pass from half court all the way inside to Audie, and it never has a chance to get there, resulting in another turnover. And then finally, if we look at this last clip, it's the exact same setup that we've had, right? Elisa Williams at the top of the key, but they can't get her the ball because the defense has extended out. In this case, they only have 1 on Audie, but they have 2 defenders in range, who are able to come over and help out if they should try to make that pass. And then the ball pressure is so good. They extend it all the way out to the sideline, almost to the logo. And Iowa State just can't move the ball from that position quickly enough to create an advantage because they're not attacking the middle. The way to beat the extended defense is you have to attack the middle. That also takes a lot of pressure off your post player. You can run high-low out of it and kind of alleviate that double team. But you see in this scenario, now they take away the middle. Iowa State makes the skip pass, but it doesn't result in anything. They make the correct pass, and they still can't create an advantage. And now we're back in the exact same scenario where Iowa State can't get it to the top of the key. West Virginia is trying to trap it on one side. So they make the same exact skip pass right back. And this one is errant. It almost resulted in a turnover. It's saved in, but now you're in the same situation. So Iowa State makes the skip pass twice. They get the ball to the third side, which is normally really good in basketball. But because those passes take so long to travel, West Virginia is just able to put Iowa State in the exact same situation. And those passes create no advantage, right? And this is part of the advantage of getting to the middle, is it's a short pass, it doesn't take much time, and there's tons of passing lanes from that. You could throw the ball 360 degrees. You can have people get open from the middle if you can get there. And this one obviously results in an off-balance 3. So I want to look at here something, this defensive setup, right? If you look at this diagram of the basketball court, this is the setup that Iowa State saw a lot from West Virginia. It was a 3-quarter front on Audie on the block, and it would turn into a full front if Iowa State tries to make that pass because they're just trying to deny Audie the ball entirely. And this makes sense because if you think about Audie Crooks, right, leading scorer in the country, she's not necessarily a carry the team, take over game type of player in the sense that you can just let her go to work and not do anything, right? You have to get her the ball. Ever since the three-point line became a thing in basketball, the types of players who have been able to just put a team on their back have not really been the big men. They've been the ones who can handle the ball, who can create space themselves and shoot with the hand in their face and get hot, right? Those are the players who are going to take over a game for you at times. But an Audie Crooks can't just take over the game on her own because you got to get her the ball. You got to find a way to get it down to her. She's not really going to be able to do anything with it outside of the paint except take a jumper. And so now you're in this situation where West Virginia has decided, okay, we'll just deny the entry entirely. We'll not even let Audie get the ball in her hands, which is a great strategy and one that Iowa State needs to find a way to adjust to. So in this scenario, if you look at this, the defender on Iowa State's corner player, this was Kinsey Hare for a lot of the game. Several of these possessions, she was in that corner, right? They have a defender who's close enough to cover up on the shooter in the corner, but also close enough to Audie Crooks where she can come over and help deny a pass. And then you also bring the baseline into play, right? What this front does from the defender is it invites a pass over the top, right? A pass with touch. It's like a deep ball in football. And that brings the baseline into play where you have to drop a pass in between two defenders and the baseline, and Audie has to catch it. And that's really hard. And to make matters worse, they extend the defense, they get the ball pressure out to where that pass is now like 25 feet. So it's just impossible. And we saw this multiple times in the West Virginia game. Iowa State tried to make that pass, but it was too long and too difficult to put the ball where it needed to be, right? And then not only that, right? Iowa State couldn't swing it around to the other side because West Virginia came up to deny a pass back to the top of the key, right, where you can kind of go either way with it. And so the open space here is on the far side of the court, but Iowa State can't get it there. And it's also in the middle, right? Iowa State needs to get someone to either drive into the middle or cut into the middle, because from that scenario, right, if you get the ball in the middle, it's a whole lot easier to get it down to your 5 on the block, under the hoop. You can score from the middle, and you can kick it out. The middle of the court is the most powerful place to be, especially for a big, especially for a 5-man or woman, right? Because you just have so many options. It's kind of like having a 3-point stance, right? You can pass, drive, or shoot. Well, you can pass, drive, or shoot from the middle of the court. So if we look at this other diagram, you can see how you beat the extended defense, right? The double and the block. And you have to space things out and use the middle of the court. And the way that you do that is I think Iowa State is going to have to bring Audie Crooks up, right? You can either try to get someone else there. You can try to get, your Addie Brown. You can try to drive it into the middle and do something. And Iowa State has some success there. But at some point, if Audie Crooks is getting so much attention, in order to get her the ball, you're going to have to bring her out a little bit. And if you bring her out to the elbow, to the 3-point line, that suddenly is going to give you a lot of options where she can score from there. She's proven she can score from there with her fadeaway jumper. She can kick it out, something that the double teams have largely taken away from Iowa State. They've prevented Iowa State from being able to use the inside-out type of offense. And also from that position, you can get an Addie Brown, you can get her down on the block, right? A Sydney Harris. You can utilize the abilities of some of Iowa State's other players to score in the paint, besides Audie Crooks, if you bring Crooks out of the paint and you clear up the paint, right? Because now you're running high-low action. And this, in my opinion, is the next adjustment that Iowa State will need to make, because if they run that high-low, it's almost unstoppable. And they tried a little bit to run it in the West Virginia game when they had Elisa Williams and Audie Crooks on the court together. And it's probably something you'll see a lot more with Addie Brown out, is those two on the floor together. But they just didn't really look prepared. They weren't able to execute it. So I'm sure this is something that they're working on in practice, and it's something you should look for going forward, is the high-low action, right? Between Williams and Crooks, where you have one on the elbow, one on the block, and they're able to either work together and score inside or kick it out to a shooter. Because once you draw the defense into the middle, now your shooters are going to be open, right? And if you get the ball in the middle, they can't trap you on one side of the court. So, any kind of numbers advantage that the defense is trying to create is gone as soon as you get the ball into the middle. So from an offensive standpoint, that's kind of what's been going on with the women. If you go back and watch some of those games, Iowa State just hasn't been able to take advantage of the middle. And going forward, it's something they're going to need to do, get the ball into the middle of the court, depending on how defenses choose to attack them. But adjustments like this, right, this is what makes basketball this so great, is just the constant back and forth of coaches having to adjust what they're doing and then players executing, right? It's not all coaching. The players have to execute. They have to be prepared to execute whatever strategy they choose to put in place. So looking ahead for the women, they play Wednesday against Colorado. That is on the road. Another 8 p.m. game. I don't know why we keep getting these 8 p.m. games. Colorado is not a good team. Their leading scorer averages 11 points a game and shoots 35% from the field. Colorado also 2-3 in Big 12 play. They have a couple of wins, but it's against Arizona and Cincinnati, two teams at the bottom of the standings. They lost a close one at Baylor, so obviously impressive there. They were able to hang tight. They lost at Arizona State and they lost at Oklahoma State. Decent teams. All three of those have winning records in Big 12 play. They also lost on the road to a ranked Louisville team. So Colorado absolutely can get up and bite you, right? I mean, I think the Cincinnati game kind of stunned everyone because it was like, okay, Iowa State lost to Baylor, but they're not going to lose to a really bad team. Well, now they have. And so now every game is in play. You have to go into every game, especially without Addie Brown, especially without Ariana Jackson, thinking we could lose this game if we're not, playing our best. And so that's what Iowa State's going to have to do. I wouldn't call Colorado a hostile atmosphere, men's or women's. It's just not really the case. If you look at Colorado's statistical profile, they only average 68 points a game. They're pretty average rebounding team. They're not great at moving the ball, right? They kind of, they're leading, their highest assist number is 2.7. That's a Ziona Walker guard. She averages 10 points, 4 rebounds, almost 3 assists. So they don't do a great job moving the ball, but they are a balanced scoring team. They have 6 players averaging 9.3 or more. They have 2 players averaging 9.9, so that's basically 5 players in double figures. So it's going to be tough to take them all away. In there you have a couple of forwards. Logan Greer, 6'4". I would expect she'll draw an Audie early in that matchup. And then Anel Dutot, I believe it is a 6-foot forward. So really the matchup will be Greer and Crooks. And I imagine that Colorado will look at the film and they'll probably do a lot of what West Virginia and Baylor did. And they'll bring that double and they'll force Iowa State to make really tough passes if Iowa State doesn't attack the middle. So just look for Iowa State to get in the middle and then to make plays from there, because it's going to be so much easier for your Jada Williamses of the world to make plays if the ball isn't stuck out on a wing with a defender in your face. Other than that, there's not really a ton to talk about with this game analytically. Iowa State needs it. I don't know if I would go as far as to say they should win it. I mean, these are teams with identical conference records. It's at Colorado. But, from a national perception standpoint, you still have the 19 next to your name. You're still 14-3. Iowa State will be expected to go win this game. And it's another one that could really damage your resume if you lose. There's not a ton to gain from a resume standpoint. It would be huge for the Cyclones to get off of this losing streak, right? When you're kind of in free fall like this, it's just how soon can you stop the bleeding? That's what basketball is all about, right? It's a game of runs within the game, but it's a game of runs overall too. Winning streaks, losing streaks. Can you stop your losing streaks? Can you extend your winning streaks? Just like, in the game, can you stop the other team's runs? Can you extend your runs? And so, it's not a sexy game. You don't look at it and go, man, I can't wait for this 8 p.m. on a Wednesday game at Colorado. But the Cyclones need this one, man. They need it badly. Got to get off this losing streak. If you do, right, it's all there for the taking. You go to Oklahoma State next. That will be a big game. It's a noon game on Fox on Sunday. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. But that game won't be as important if Iowa State can't find a way to beat Colorado. It's essential to get off this losing streak before you go into that tough environment in Stillwater this weekend. So obviously, Cyclones need to make some adjustments, get used to life without Addie Brown, because it's going to be a while before she's back. And if you can do that at Colorado, you'll have opportunities. The Big 12 is not tough. You can string together wins if you can find a way to win close games. Elsewhere around the Big 12, on the women's side, Texas Tech, Houston on Tuesday. That's the only game. Not much to talk about there. Texas Tech is a really good team, man. 18-0, undefeated in the Big 12. I don't know how they're still only ranked number 17. Iowa State will go in there a little bit later. That's going to be a tough game. Expect Texas Tech to roll. Also on Wednesday, Oklahoma State at Kansas is one worth watching. Obviously, Kansas is a team that can jump up there and compete with the big boys. They almost beat Iowa State on the road, and Iowa State at full strength, and they'll host Oklahoma State. That's one that the Cowboys also kind of need there in similar positions. Oklahoma State and Iowa State, both teams with very high expectations, and they will need to go on the road and beat inferior opponents before that showdown in Stillwater on Sunday. TCU West Virginia is the big one on Wednesday. West Virginia is somehow unranked. They're now 4-1 in the conference, 14-3. This is a battle for second place in the conference. TCU, obviously, really good team. 16-1 overall. They had an undefeated non-conference. They're playing great basketball, but that's one that's at West Virginia. So definitely be on the lookout for that game. It's at 6, so not at the same time as the Iowa State women. Be really interested to see who emerges out of that one. I would imagine West Virginia will be ranked in the next AP poll if they can even go 1-1 this week, even if they lose to TCU, which will be great for the Big 12. And then another one on Wednesday, we got Cincinnati UCF. It's not really worth talking about. Those two teams are 1-4. Cincinnati's only win somehow over Iowa State. Nothing relevant there. And then Baylor, number 18 Baylor against Utah. Utah also 4-1 in the Big 12. That's a team that could make some noise. And again, they host the ranked team. So we got a couple of these games on Wednesday, Utah Baylor, TCU West Virginia, where you have a 4-1 unranked team hosting a 4-1 ranked team. We're going to learn a lot about the Big 12 from those two games. Just from a conference standpoint, I wouldn't hate to see the home teams win both of those games, because if you get a West Virginia, if you get a Utah into the rankings, you're going to start getting a lot more respect as a conference. There'll be more opportunities for Iowa State to build their resume. And that's what, Iowa State fans really need to be rooting for at this point, because they really haven't had a lot of chances to get marquee wins. You have the Iowa win, but missed opportunity, obviously, against Baylor, missed opportunity against West Virginia. So that is all for now that we have on the women's side, and that is going to wrap up our first ever show. If you're listening to this episode, thank you so much. You got to start somewhere, and this is where we're starting. We'll get better. Hopefully, the Iowa State women's team will get better as well. The men, obviously, looking forward to a great run, hopefully a deep run in March. It really does feel like this is the season where it's like, if not now, when, right? It's as talented a team as TJ Altenberger has had, and I look forward to covering every second of it. So for now, we will be back Thursday or Friday after both of those games. If you want an instant reaction, I'd go over to Cyclone Fanatic. They're doing great work over there. But I'll react to both of those games on the next show. Give me some time to, really dig into those two games. Maybe rewatch them, look at the film. So for now, thank you so much. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.